Hello everybody and welcome back to Kerbal Space Program, where last episode we got this thing into interplanetary flight and then decided that we just didn't have enough life support. So what I want to do is I want to use certainly water and carbon recyclers in order to deal with that. The real question is, how do we want to deal with food? Do we want to just bring a very large amount of food with us? Because growing new food is not very space efficient, right? We can absolutely do water and carbon rescrubbers. So this inputs electric charge and carbon dioxide and outputs oxygen and waste. That's way too big. We're going to need to, of course, go for the smaller size carbon extractor. And the question is, will one of these produce enough oxygen for all of our two Kerbonauts here, right? And we need to do the same thing with a water purifier. So this inputs wastewater and outputs regular water. Okay, that'll at least buy us a lot of time. The question is how much time, right? And then we've got the big food question. So the algae farm here, of course, this produces fertilizer. For the actual farm, all we would need is fertilizer inputs. So let's just search food here. Nothing. Okay, that's not ideal. We're not getting good searches there. Okay, so that's good to know. We could just bring a food container here, and this would contain 240 food. So that's a theoretical option. Is it one that we want to do? Well, we'll think about that. For the time being, what I want to do is I want to put this out on the pad. This is a simulation because we're not even going to launch this thing. All we need to do is we need to just advance time forward and see if our oxygen and water goes up or down. And what happens with our carbon dioxide and our wastewater amounts. Because I think that it's probably not a direct one-to-one there. So let's pop open our resources here. We can see our water is currently at 129, and we can see that our oxygen is very high. Our food is at 145. So let's see how this goes. We need to open up our solar panels because power is another concern that I have here. Will we be generating enough power with these online? So we'll start this carbon extractor and we'll start this water purifier. And we can see that our electric charge is fine for right now. Okay, I'm going to advance time forward. Nothing is changing, and I'm wondering if this is because we're on the ground at Kerbin. So let's just put this in orbit and see if that makes us start draining life support. That may well be the case. So let's just set our orbit around Kerbin. I don't care where. Just an orbit around Kerbin is absolutely fine. And you can see that now some of this is actually starting to change. So our food is going to go negative. Okay, so our oxygen is very slightly negative. Wastewater is holding at 0. Waste is going up, but we expect that. Carbon dioxide is holding at 0. Our oxygen is definitely dropping. Our electric charge is dropping, but we're in shadow. Yeah, we're good on electric charge for now. So our oxygen is very, very, very slowly dropping. I feel like this is an acceptable speed for our oxygen to drop at. Our water is holding at 0. Okay, let's hop into here and focus on Kerbin. And let's bump up the speed here. I want to know how long we have before we run out of food. Okay, so waste is building up. We've got a lot of time on our oxygen and water now. Our oxygen and water are almost functionally infinite. Almost. We ran out of electric charge, but that's fine. Okay, so yeah, we should assume that our oxygen is functionally infinite at this point, or almost infinite. Our water is infinite, it appears. We're able to recycle the water at this juncture. We could add in another oxygen recycler, but actually I think our problem is that we're not producing enough carbon dioxide. That's what I think is happening right now. So we're currently going forward at a pretty high speed. Let's go at a much higher speed. We're now at the maximum speed. We ran out of electricity again. Okay, sure. Back to the maximum speed. We ran out of electricity again. Well, as long as we're not in the shadow, we know our electricity is fine. So I'm just going to give us infinite electricity for now. I'm not concerned about electricity for the moment. What I'm concerned about is how long this amount of food will last. So the oxygen is definitely dropping. That does, I believe... I think that's due to the carbon dioxide quantities. We ran out of electricity again. Right. Infinite electricity doesn't actually affect those parts. It's fine. So we're going to run out of food here soon. This is enough food for approximately 6 months. And as you can see, we're perfectly fine on water. No water issue at all. Oxygen, it's dropping, but if this is 6 months, this is what, like 5%? Hang on, we can actually calculate it. Calculator. What do we got here? Unfortunately, this is a Unity game, and when you tab out, it minimizes, so that's awkward. 24,686 divided by, this is 26,441. So 6 months used approximately, I'm going to round up here, about 7%. So that's, you know, pretty okay. That means that we would have, like, just very back of the envelope, lots of rounding here. We would have, like, a lot of time. We would have somewhere around 5 to, like, 8 years, depending on how you want to round it. That's a lot of time. Food is the issue at this point. I think that we can safely say our oxygen and water are not issues. So let's pull this back to vehicle assembly. And let's see what we've got going on as far as food. So, we know that our current quantity of food is, what was that, 160? I think? Let's see. We've got a resource display here somewhere, I think. I'm pretty sure we have a resource display here somewhere. Well, we could put it back out on the pad and get a resource display that way for sure. But yeah, I'm pretty sure we've got like 160 food. So if we assume that that's roughly 6 months worth, then this here would be close-ish to a year's worth of food. So that's definitely something to think about. There's this greenhouse container here. Now that inputs water, and it outputs oxygen and food. So that would help our food situation, but our water situation, that would be rough. For sure. I'm wondering, can we... Yeah, we can actually launch with wastewater and carbon dioxide. And we probably should, actually. It's kind of a weird thing to do, but if we launch with the wastewater and the carbon dioxide, then we have that to clear out, right? So that seems reasonably fine. We've got this down over here, that's a water hex can. This one's a support food hex can. This one is an oxygen hex can. This one is a supplies hex can, so that's okay. Food, oxygen, water, and supplies, and this is a waste hex can. So we can have carbon dioxide here, we can have wastewater. That's going to actually keep us going for a lot longer. So that's very interesting, that that's going to keep us going for longer. We actually want to be bringing that along, which is kind of wild, but here we are. So at this point, food is absolutely the biggest question. A greenhouse container could be brought. As a hypothetical, we could put it there, and this would probably give us enough food to keep going for a good long time. This is 50 fertilizer here, but we could also bring in an algae farm, but that inputs ore. This is really, both of these are really designed to be on colonies. So I think that we really have to just bring our food. Yeah, I think that's the only real way. We need to just bring enough food. So 240 food, if we're assuming 160 is 6 months worth, then 160, that means that per Kerbal, it's going to be about 80 food per 6 months. But 160 divided by 240 is, yeah, that's 2/3. Okay, so that would make sense. That would make sense. So this is basically 9 months worth, right here. If we want to target about 5 years worth, we've already got 6 months worth, and then this would be an additional 9. This would be an additional 18, so this would be a total of 24 months. That's 2 years. This would then be an additional 18 on top of that. So I'm thinking right now, we could put these on top of these tanks. The real question is, are we going to be jettisoning any of that, right? So if we were to do this, that would give us a lot of additional food. We're assuming our needs per Kerbal per month are 160 divided by 2 per Kerbal, and then divide that by 6 to be about 13.3 repeating. Let's round that up to be 14 per month, 14 food per month. So that's absolutely fine. And then we can put that in there. I just want to change what these are strutted to a little bit. Okay, something kind of like that. So that's definitely going to be a lot of additional food. What does this do to our thrust to weight? That's not a problem. I don't think that's an issue. So in this case, let's put this out on the pad for another quick simulated run here. I want to see how much we're going to have for food at this point. So we know that this should be 240 times 4 plus whatever our actual amount was. Times 4 is 960. So this is currently at 1105 minus 960, 145. Okay, so this is actually a little better than we thought it was. I was thinking we had 160 food. We had 145 previously. So that sounds fine. We can see that we're full up on, or almost full up, on carbon dioxide and wastewater. That's okay. I like it. And what we're going to do now is, once again, we're going to extend out our solar panels. We're going to turn on the running of our water purifier and our carbon extractor. And then we're going to just place this in orbit. I don't care where. And at this point, we're going to run to see just how long we've got. Yeah, it keeps running out of electricity. This would actually be better if we were in a much... I just staged it. Okay. I have no idea what way we're facing. Yeah, this is not ideal. We're going to revert that back. Good thing that it's simulated. And this, I was going to say this will be much better if we're in a much, much, much higher orbit. And that's absolutely the case. So I'm going to do that. I don't want to have those SRBs burning. That's completely irrelevant to the current test. What I'm just trying to determine is how long we're going to have food and water for. And it should be, well, food and water should be infinite. I'm not concerned about that. I'm going to put this at, like, whatever the maximum is. Okay. You know what? This is basically the maximum. Good enough. So that'll do. So we want to extend this right on out and extend this. Now we shouldn't have those power issues, and we shouldn't have that as a variable. So we'll start our water purifier, we'll start our carbon extractor, and we're going to just chill here for now. And I want to keep an eye on our resource usage. That's the only real concern at this point. So we're at maximum speed here. And yep, that waste is filling up, but that's fine. We don't actually care. Why did our electricity just run out? Where's the sun right now? Ah, it's because of our orientation to the sun. So I think we should probably consider having some additional solar panels on here. Let's pull that back to the vehicle assembly, and let's put a couple of non-retractable solar panels out here, I'm thinking. So that would be, and we would do non-retractables because they're cheaper. The other thing we could do, though, is we could upgrade these from 1P6s to be better solar panels. That would be things like the 10Cs, which would definitely reach out further and maybe rotate a little bit better. We could also take them up to 4 of those. Or we could go for like the 1x5s. The power flow here is significantly higher. This cannot be retracted. So neither of these can be retracted. We would lose them on re-entry. So that's definitely something to think about. This one, however, is a retractable version. So if we were to do... Oh, that's very large. That's extremely large. I don't really want one that's that large. Especially out here, we're going to be junking this, and we don't need that to be retractable. So what I'm thinking then is 1x6s remain here. But I want to have some additional solar panels on here. We could instead have them be in 4x symmetry and place them about here. That's an interesting option. So what that ends up doing is that gives us something like this, and then basically no matter what orientation we're in, we should have at least one set of solar panels that has halfway decent coverage from the sun, in theory. We could even move them down to be, you know, about here or so. About like that. And then if we're going to do EVA activities, we should probably furl these. But something along the lines of this is, I think, a better power setup. Okay, so let's go ahead and put this back out for more simulation. Our real question remains, how long is this food going to last? The food is the only real concern at this time, because we should be fine on everything else. I'm not terribly concerned about it. But the food is very finite, and we should at least know what our time budget is on that. So let's put this back out at a maximum orbit around Kerbal. There we go. And we will extend our solar panels. 1, 2, 3, and now 4. So this will get us more power flow and more consistent power flow. And keep in mind, we're not going to have all of this over here to block our power flow, so that's not a concern. Let's turn on our carbon extractor and our water purifier. Open this guy right on up, and let's warp. So we're at maximum warp here, and as we can see, our power is holding absolutely fine. No issue whatsoever there. Okay, so we're keeping an eye on that food drain. And over 90 days, this is about 3 months, over 90 days, we've used like 70 food. We had a small shadow there. That's understood. So our food is definitely lasting us a whole lot better this time. No doubt about that. I'm assuming we're pulling the food from out here first, and we're not pulling the food from in here. That is correct. Okay, so this is looking very good at this point. I'm keeping an eye on that water. You can see our carbon dioxide is dropping, and that's fully expected. However, our oxygen is currently maximized, and I'm wondering if we're wasting this carbon dioxide. But to be honest, I'm really deeply unconcerned about our level of oxygen. I think we'll have oxygen for a really long time. Keep in mind, a year in Kerbal Space Program is 400 days, so we're going to be coming up on a year here soon. And as soon as we do, I want to check in. Actually, it's more than 400 days? How many days is a year? Okay, slightly over 400 days. That's fine. So at this point, let's come on out of warp, and we can see we're at 783 out of 1105. So, calculator, 783 divided by 1105 is about, if we round it up, 71%, but it's 70.859%. Okay. So that, of course, means that we have enough for about 3.5 years, approximately. Is that enough time, do we think? Well, it depends on how efficient our transfer is. That's what it comes down to. It's a good amount of time. That's definitely a good amount of time, but 3.5 years, it's kind of borderline. So let's pull this back, and I'm thinking we might add in one more food container, and that'll give us a lot better margin. So if we put a food container right here, I think that'll be pretty much good on the life support. So that would be this guy. And we just do something like that. I wish we had a, like, radial food generation module, but, I mean, it makes sense that we don't, right? That absolutely makes sense. So, a lot of this stuff is definitely intended for colonization, and we're going to be using them once we get there. Like, this planetary greenhouse, that's pretty neat. No doubt about that. We'll probably actually make some use of that later on. But for now, we're going to be using the smaller greenhouse container. It'll be okay for now. So at this point, I think we're pretty much ready to launch this guy, assuming we're comfortable with the amount of food. So 145, right? If 145 is 6 months, so that would be 140, and this is very rounded, right? Very rounded. This is not precise. But 145 divided by 2 gives us 72.5 use over 6 months per Kerbal. We divide that by 6, and that gives us approximately 12 per month per Kerbal. So that means our overall food budget is 24 per month. So that means that each one of these is 10 months, almost exactly. Okay. But keep in mind, a year is longer than 360 days. So what I'm calculating here is 30 days per month. And KSP doesn't really have a concept of months. So there's that. So 180 I was calculating as being 6 months. And sure. But KSP doesn't have a concept of a month. So a year in KSP, we just determined is like 400 and some days. I don't know exactly how many. I'm going to use the funny number of 420 because people seem to like that number. And that's, I don't think, the actual number, but I'm going to use it. And we're going to divide that by 30 to see how many months are in that year. So the answer is 14. Okay. So that means that this is 10 out of 14, or, 5/7 of a year. Interesting. Very, very interesting. I kind of want to toss in one more food container and then call it good. Let's check what our thrust to weight looks like. Basically unchanged. So that is very, very ideal. Okay, I think we're pretty much ready to do this. I think our life support is pretty much where we need it to be. We need to have the food. The real question is, are we going to be throwing away food when we detach these tanks? We've got all of this other life support out here as well, and I have a feeling that that may end up being the case. We'll just have to feel it out, and if we throw some away, then we throw some away. Hopefully we don't. We could keep these tanks dry and just be like, we're going to give up the DV. That's a distinct possibility. But you can leave your offerings to the engagement gods in the form of likes, comments, subscribes, and bell ringings, and a very special thank you to all of the channel members for making this video possible. including ALS Gamer, Dark Horse, Ethan Feldman, Upper Cumberland Gamers, Nick Smarty, Dimitri H, Punching the Microphone, The Lounge, STL, and all the rest. And of course, you. Thank you for watching. If you'd like to support the channel, you can click the join button down below the video, and as always, I will see you all next time.